We are finishing up our circle section. And so let's do this just because I know it's been a few days since we've seen each other. So I'm just going to go, I'm down at the blank portion at the bottom of page 3. You can see the page 3 number, just to use a little bit of the space. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to, just to refresh our memory, I want you to find the equation of the circle. Let me raise this up. With center 10, -5, and a radius equal to, let's go 11. Okay, so I'll give you 30 or 35 seconds just to recollect the center radius form of a circle, which was kind of our big thing from last time. All right, so the center radius form of a circle, this is the general format. It is x minus h squared, where h is the x coordinate of the center, plus y minus k squared, where k is the y coordinate of the center, is equal to r squared. And if you remember last time, and you can turn to the front page of your sheet or rewind the previous video, this was derived from the distance formula, which we saw on our very first day of class. So I'm just going to plug the appropriate information in, my center, my radius. So this is x minus what? What's my first term? Perfect, thank you. X minus 10 squared plus y minus, what's next? Yep, it's y minus -5, and then yes, the minus a negative becomes +5. Excellent work. And then my radius is 11, and your calculator will tell you that 11 squared is 121. Okay, so all that was for us to reflect and remember what the center radius form. So where we left off our last time is we did problems like exercise 5. And so this one you can do, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do it. This equation is given to us in standard form. And so what you are going to do for me is you're going to complete the square, and you're going to determine what the center and the radius are. Okay, so we did 2 problems like this last time, so you can look back on your work on the previous page. Just to give you a hint, what you're going to do is you're going to group the x's, you're going to group the y's, you're going to put this number on the other side, and then you're going to complete the square so that you can determine the center and radius. So give it a try. You can have another one though if you want. So my process for completing the square for my circles is like this. I'm first going to group my x terms together. So I'm going to put that x squared plus 2x in a set of parentheses. And then I'm going to leave a little gap and then plus, and then I'm going to put the y squared plus 6y in parentheses, and again, leave a little gap. This negative 15, I'm going to bring over to the other side by adding 15 to both sides, so I get equal to positive 15. There's my first step. And now what I need to do is I need to add a little something in both those sets of parentheses. This is the completing the square step. So what did you add in the parenthesis with the x terms? 1, yes. And the way we do this is you take half of this number in front of the x, half of 2 is 1, and then 1 squared is plus 1. There we go. Let's try again. What am I going to, oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Since we've added 1 to the left side of the equation, we have to now add 1 to the right side of the equation to keep everything in balance. Same thing for my y terms. What am I going to add to in here to complete the square? Yep, half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9, and then keep the equation in balance. I will add 9 to the other side. And now the good news, the reason it's called completing the square is because now what we have is what's called a perfect square trinomial. And what that means is when I factor it, the two factors of 1 that add up to 2 are plus 1 and plus 1. So I end up with x plus 1 squared is my result. Same thing with the y's. The two factors of 9 that are going to add up to 6 are plus 3 and plus 3. So I have y plus 3 squared. And then 15 plus 1 is 15 plus 1 is 16, plus 9 is 25. So there is my center radius form, which now allows me to just read the center right off and read the radius. So what's the x coordinate of the center going to be? -1, true. And then what's the y coordinate of the center going to be? That is great. And then what's the radius going to be? Square root of 25, which is just going to be 5. It has a nice relaxing square root. One little hint I did give you before we ended our time together last time was for this problem, exercise 6, if you wanted to work ahead, I had told you that the format of any circle is going to have the same coefficient in front of the x squared and the y squared, and they'll both be positive. So this is a circle. Does anyone remember what I said you have to do before you can do the completing the square step? Yeah, you have to divide everything by that coefficient. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to divide every term that we have by 3. That way I have no number in front of the x squared or y squared. There's a 1 there. And then I want you to go ahead and do the completing the square and tell me what the center and the radius are. First step is I'm going to divide by these 3's. So this is not optional. When you're asked to find the center and the radius of a circle, if there is a number that is not 1 in front of the x squared, y squared, you've got to reduce it. So this turns out to be, after we do that, x squared plus y squared. 54 divided by 3 is 18y, and then 240 divided by 3 is 80. 0 divided by 3 is 0. Next step, I'm going to group those x's and y's. Well, the good news about the x's is just x squared, so there's nothing to group. There's nothing I have to do with that. The y squareds, I have y squared plus 18y. I'm going to leave a little gap. And then I'm going to take this 80 over to the other side by subtracting it, so I have negative 80 on that side. Any questions for me before we go ahead and finish this problem out? Here, I'm going to add a 81. Because half of 18 is 9, 9 squared becomes 81. I've got to keep my equation in balance, so I will add 81 to the other side as well. All right, that's going to pretty much finish this up. This is now a perfect square trinomial. The two factors of 81 that add up to 18 are plus 9 and plus 9. So I have y plus 9 squared, and then negative 80 plus 81 is a positive 1. Which allows me now to figure out the center and the radius. What's the, I'll just ask you this one, what's the x-coordinate of the center? 0. Yeah, there's nothing added or subtracted to the x, so that's 0. Since this is y plus 9 squared, the y-coordinate's negative 9. Since this is 1, the square root of 1 is 1, so the radius is 1. So far in this section, before we do our very last thing, what we've done is we got introduced to the center radius form of circle, and then we were given equations and found the center and the radius and graphed them. Then we were given center and the radius and asked for the equation. And then the last thing that we've done is taken equations and found equations not in center radius form and found our center and radius by completing the square. The last thing is we're each going to do an example. This is my favorite problem from this section. So there's definitely one of these on the test that you're going to have. So put a cute little asterisk by this because you'll see this again. What we're asked to do is find the equation of the circle with a center of negative 1, 7. But this time, I don't give you the radius. I tell you that the graph goes through the point 2, 4. So just to remind you, I wrote this down already. Here's my center radius form. I need 2 bits of information. I have to have these 2 things. I need to know what the center is, and then I need to know what the radius is, so I can plug in and figure out the equation. Well, the center is given to me. That's good news. It's negative 1, 7. No big deal there. But I'm not given the radius. Am I given enough information to figure out the radius? Well, the answer to that question is yes, I am. Otherwise, why would we be doing the problem? The definition of the radius is it is the distance between the center and a point on the edge of the circle, 2, 4. So what I'm going to do in order to find the radius is I am going to use the distance formula from way, way back, and I am going to find the distance between these 2 points right here. So let's do that. I'm just gonna drop down here a little bit and do my scrap work right here. So the distance between these 2 points is the square root. This is my distance formula. There will be a distance formula problem on the final exam, so it's a good thing to keep handy with you. So the distance is the difference between the x's. So that's negative 1 minus 2. Uh-oh. That 10 gave up on me. We're going to change colors here. Sorry. Negative 1 minus 2 squared plus, and then the difference between the y's, 7 minus 4. So 7 minus 4 squared. So I know we haven't used it in a long time, but using the distance formula, this is not a new skill for us. Hopefully it's jogging some memories for you. -1 minus 2 is -3, which I'm going to square in a minute. 7 minus 4 is +3, which we'll square in just a moment. -3 squared is 9. 3 squared is 9. So the distance between those 2 points, which is also the radius, is the square root of 18. Now I am going to be a little bit lazy. I am not going to simplify the square root of 18 because if you remember, in just a moment, we are going to square it when we put it back into the circle formula. So I would just be doing extra work. So the radius that I'm going to use is equal to the square root of 18. I know that's unsimplified. If that was the final answer, if all I was asking you for was the radius, yes, you would definitely simplify that. But since I'm going to use that immediately, I'm not going to simplify that. All right, so here's the end of the problem then. The end of the problem is I've got x minus the x coordinate of the radius, which is -1. So x minus -1 is x plus 1 squared. There's the beginning of my circle, plus y minus the y coordinate of the radius, which is 7. So y minus 7 squared. And then that is equal to the square root of 18 squared, because the radius is square root of 18, and the square root of 18 squared is just 18. And this right here, this green line that I'm now putting a box around, this is my final answer to the problem. Your last problem for this section is right next door. It is an almost identical problem, just different numbers, so that you get the joy of going through and doing the problem. So I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes, make as much progress as you possibly can. Just going to get started on the arithmetic. So as you're working, keep working. Don't be distracted by me. Once again, it's the same set of parameters. I'm asked to find the equation of the circle. I am given the center. That information is very straightforward. But instead of being given the radius directly, I'm told a point that the graph goes through. Once again, the definition of the radius is it's the distance between the center and a point on the edge of the circle. So I need to, again, find the distance. So here's my distance formula. I've got my square root of the difference between the x values is 5 minus -3. So that is going to be 5 plus 3 squared. And then the difference between the y values is 3 minus 2. So 3 minus 2 squared. 5 plus 3 is 8, so that is going to be 8 squared. I'm just showing all of my arithmetic steps here, so if you can cut a little bit of that and make this a little shorter, I totally understand. 8 squared is 64, 1 squared is 1, so what we get is the distance between those 2 points, which is the radius, is square root of 65. Now, as opposed to the previous problem, the square root of 65, 65 does not have a factor that's a perfect square. It's 5 times 13, I think, if I'm doing my arithmetic and talking at the same time. correctly. So this would not simplify anyway. We can finish this up now. My formula for my circle is x minus the x coordinate of the center, which is 5. Make sure you're using the center. This point over here it has nothing to do with the center now, so we've already used it. We can dispose of that. So x minus 5 squared, and then y minus 3 is the y coordinate of the center, and then the square root of 65 squared is 65, and there is my equation of the circle. Before I stop this recording, is there any question, anything that I'm unclear on, anything that we need to talk about a little more? Any questions you ask, you are doing a favor to anyone watching the video, because they might have a question and they're always welcome to email it, but you all get instant feedback.